यशोदानन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना यशोदानन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना यशोदानन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना यमुनतीरावनचारी यमुनतीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानन्दन व्रजजनरञ्जना यशोदानन्दन व्रजजनरञ्जना यशोदानन्दन व्रजजनरञ्जना यमुनतीरावनचारी यमुनतीरावनचारी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtotra Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrind Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Okay, please repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Can do the prayers together. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, unto Naranarayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadev, the author. Nashta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyamadi Pashyatya Deshatarine. Okay, we are continuing with our reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Canto 3, Chapter 31, titled The Movements of the Living Entities. So we're going to do from text 11 through 21 today, and our focus verse is text 21. So can we get started on? So after hearing the horror story of birth yesterday, we continue with the gory details. Okay.
The living entity in this frightful condition of life, bound by 7 layers of material ingredients, prays with folded hands, appealing to the Lord, who has put him in that condition.
The human soul says, take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in his various eternal forms, and walks on the surface of the world. I take shelter of him only, because he can give me relief from all fear, and from him I have received this condition of life, which is just befitting my impious activities.
Yeah. If you just read the first verse, you could basically fault Krishna for everything. Right? Because the spirit soul is praying, it's the Lord who has put me in that condition. But now he's clarifying that it's because of his own deeds that he is in such a condition. Okay?
I, the pure soul, appearing now bound by my activities, am lying in the womb of my mother by the arrangement of Maya. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him, who is also here with me, but who is unaffected and changeless. He is unlimited, but he is perceived in the repentant heart. To him I offer my respectful obeisances.
I am separated from the Supreme Lord because of my being in this material body, which is made of 5 elements, and therefore my qualities and senses are being misused. Although I am essentially spiritual, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the material nature of the living entities, because he is devoid of such a material body, and because he is always glorious in his spiritual qualities, I offer my obeisances unto him.
Haribol. Actually, it's very nice, the set of prayers that the spirit soul is praying. He's constantly giving more evidence on what he's saying in the previous verse, right? The first verse he's saying, oh, it's the Lord that put me, but oh, it's because of my own conditioning. And in the previous verse here, he or she was saying that, oh, the Lord is also here with me. You know, he says, he is also here with me, but who is unaffected and changeless. How is he unaffected and changeless? That's basically how Krishna is unaffected and changeless in the next verse, right? It's very beautiful the way these verses are placed.
Text 15. The human soul further prays, the living entity is put under the influence of material nature and continues a hard struggle for existence on the path of repeated birth and death. This conditioned life is due to his forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, without the Lord's mercy, how can he again engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord?
Yeah. In the purports to these verses, Prabhupada is constantly emphasizing the difference between the Jivatma and the Paramatma. How we are qualitatively one, Krishna and us, but we are quantitatively very, very different. Prabhupada is constantly emphasizing. And for every verse, almost every verse in this section, there is an equivalent Gita verse. Can anybody say what the equivalent of what we read was? Yeah. Mamai vamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manas shastrani indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. That the living entity, Krishna says, is his eternal part and parcel. Mamai vamsho jiva loke. It's not that it's a temporary condition, Krishna says. Like, because there is this philosophy where right now we are parts and parcel, we are separated from the Lord, we can merge with the Lord at some point, right, and be one with him. But Krishna is saying, Mamai vamsho jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana, that eternally these are my fragmental parts and parcels. And now they're struggling with their 6 senses in the mind. This is basically what the spirit soul is also saying here in this prayer. Okay, and the other important point that Prabhupada also emphasizes, all these purports are so amazing, this entire section. He's emphasizing how we can practice devotional service. The one condition that is given here on how we can practice devotional service is what? We just read the translation. Yeah. Without the mercy of the Lord, there is absolutely no way we can practice devotional service. Okay. Let's continue.
Text 16. No one other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the localized Paramatma, the partial representation of the Lord, is directing all inanimate and animate objects. He is present in the three phases of time: past, present, and future. Therefore, the conditioned soul is engaged in different activities by his direction, and in other words, in order to get free from the threefold miseries of this conditioned life, we have to surrender unto him only.
I want to read this one. No, I'm just fallen into a pool of blood, stool, and urine within the abdomen of his mother, his own body scorched by the mother's gastric fire. The embodied soul, anxious to get out, counts his months and prays, "O my Lord, when shall I, a wretched soul, be released from this confinement?"
Yeah. Usually we celebrate birth, isn't it? Rest of it we understand. Oh, disease is horrible, old age is horrible, death, definitely people in this world think it's horrible. But people think birth is a matter of great joy. But you can see, it's horrible. That's why Krishna says there are 4 problems that are common to everybody, right? Each of us can have different individual problems that might not be applicable to each other. But Krishna says there are 4 problems that are common for all living entities. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha, Doshanu, Darshanam. Krishna says these 4 things, and the Janma part is usually not very clear on why birth is so problematic. We understand in the sense that once you're born, then you have to undergo all these miseries, right? That is a very straightforward understanding, that you don't want to be born again because you're going to be miserable. But even in the womb, in fact, Prabhupada says, right from the point of conception, it's only misery. It's not even that it's so far into the gestational period, but right from the point of conception, it's a very miserable place to be in. And if you can think of it, it's a very drastic position to be in. And Prabhupada says in the previous section, the only reason why we're able to tolerate that is why, our consciousness is not developed. Krishna somehow puts us in this position where it's tolerable. If our consciousness is fully developed, Prabhupada says we would die. Like, we would not want to live in such a condition where you have worms, stool, pus, urine, everything trying to eat you also, and you're amongst all of this, and then you're in this really curled position with no freedom. It's a really terrible position to be in. And therefore he's counting the days, when am I going to get out? But you'll see a sudden shift in how he thinks.
My dear Lord, by your causeless mercy, I am awakened to consciousness, although I am only 10 months old. For this causeless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the friend of all fallen souls, there is no way to express my gratitude but to pray with folded hands.
Yeah. Such a soul is actually incredibly rare, Prabhupada says. It's not that everybody in the womb realizes Krishna and starts praying to Krishna. And the evidence that Prabhupada gives is also a Gita verse. Anybody? Close. The other one. Bahunam Janmanamante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudevam Sarvamati Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. That such a soul is actually incredibly difficult to find. For somebody who has come to this realization, after many births, such a person comes to this realization that we have to take shelter of Krishna. And such a soul in the womb is actually incredibly rare. The person who is actually praying. Okay? And one thing about this verse is, there is nothing that we can do to what Krishna has given us. Right? Practically speaking, Krishna gives us so many things. The only thing that we can do to Krishna is be grateful. Fold our hands and be grateful. That's the only thing that we can give back to Krishna. Other than that, there is practically nothing that we can give to Krishna. So that's what the spirit soul is doing, is that he's very grateful. This quality of gratitude is really, really important for a devotee, or anybody in general, especially for a devotee, for everything that we get from Krishna. Okay, text 19.
The living entity in another type of body sees only by instinct. He knows the agreeable and disagreeable sense perceptions of that particular body. But I have a body in which I can control my senses, and I can understand my destination. Therefore I offer my respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whom I have been blessed with this body, and by whose grace I can see Him within and without.
Yeah. What is the other type of body that is being mentioned here? Yeah, the animal body. It's a very clear distinction between the body that we have, the human body, and the animal body. Right? The animal body sees only instinct. It cannot differentiate. The only thing that it can differentiate is something that's good for its body, something that is not good for its body. That's the only thing it can differentiate. But other than that, it cannot differentiate something that is good for its own well-being and things like that in a higher sense. So therefore, even though the living entity is struggling so much in the womb, the living entity is still grateful to Krishna, because Krishna has provided this living entity with a body that can actually think in these terms, where we can think of our future destination, we can control our senses. All of these are something that human body can do, and if we don't do it, we are called two-legged animals, right? Which is basically doing the same thing as the animals do: eating, mating, sleeping, defending, right? Okay. Text 20.
Therefore, my Lord, although I am living in a terrible condition, I do not wish to depart from my mother's abdomen to fall again into the blind well of materialistic life. Your external energy, called Devamaya, at once captures the newly born child, and immediately false identification, which is the beginning of cycle of conditioned birth and death, begins.
Yeah. So this is how horrible living in this world is. We've seen such a terrible condition in which the living entity is within the womb, right? But the living entity prefers that to being in such a condition rather than being born and living in this world. Why? Because it's not that the facility, of course, is much better in this world than in the womb itself, right? But there is one thing that is differentiating. What is it? That's the difference on why this living entity wants to be in the womb. Yeah. Actually, in this womb, in this situation at least, the living entity is able to think about Krishna. And the living entity is thinking, oh, in spite of all the miserable material condition I'm in, I'm at least in this position where I can think about you, Krishna. I can actually figure out what position I am in. I'm able to pray to you. I'm able to think about you. But when I'm born, I'm going to be covered by this external energy of yours, and I'm going to forget everything. And therefore, it is better to be in this horrible position inside the womb rather than being born, is the prayer that the living entity is giving to Krishna. Okay, this is the verse that we have to do for today. We'll do the Sanskrit and then the English. Can you? Tasmadaham vikata viklava uddharishya atmanamashu tamasa suhridatmanaiva bhuyo yatha vyasanametadane मामे भविष्यादुपसादित विष्णुपाद तस्मादहं विगत विक्लव उद्धरिष्य आत्मानमाशु तमस सुहृदात्मनैव भूयो यथा व्यसनमेतदनेकरन्ध्रम् मामे भविष्यादुपसादित विष्णुपाद Somebody wants to chant? तस्मादहं विगत विक्लव उद्धरिष्य आत्मानमाशु तमस सुहृदात्मनैव भूयो यथा व्यसनमते तदनेकरन्ध्रम् मामे भविष्यादुपसादित विष्णुपाद तस्मादहं विगत विक्लव उद्धरिष्य आत्मानमाशु तमस सुहृदात्मनैव भूयो यथा व्यसनमेतदनेकरन्ध्रम् मामे भविष्यादुपसादित विष्णुपाद तस्मादहं विगत विक्लव उद्धरिष्य आत्मानमाशु तमस सुहृदात्मनैव भूयो यथा वसनमेतदनेकरन्ध्रम् मामे भविष्यादुपसादित विष्णुपाद. Okay, translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This is the word for word translation. Tasmat, therefore, aham, I, vigata, ceased, viklava, agitation, uddharishye, shall deliver, atmanam, myself, ashu, quickly, tamasha, from the darkness, surda atmana, with friendly intelligence, eva, indeed, bhuya, again, yatha, so that, vyasanam, plight, etat, this, anekarandram, entering many wombs, ma, not, may, my, bhavishyat, may occur, upasadita, placed in my mind, Vishnupada, the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. Translation. Therefore, without being agitated anymore, I shall deliver myself from the darkness of nescience with the help of my friend, clear consciousness. Simply by keeping the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu in my mind, I shall be saved from entering into the wombs of many mothers for repeated birth and death. Please repeat. Therefore, without being agitated anymore, I shall deliver myself from the darkness of nations with the help of my friend, clear consciousness. Simply by keeping the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu in my mind, I shall be saved from entering into the wombs of many mothers for repeated birth and death. Somebody want to get us started with the translation, purport?
The miseries of material existence begin from the very day when the spirit soul takes shelter in the ovum and sperm of the mother and father. They continue after he is born from the womb, and then they are further prolonged. We do not know where the suffering ends. It does not end, however, by one's changing his body. The change of body is taking place at every moment. But that does not mean that we are improving from the fetal condition of life to a more comfortable condition. The best thing, therefore, is to develop Krishna consciousness. Here it is stated, upasadita vishnupada. This means realization of Krishna consciousness. One who is intelligent by the grace of the Lord and develops Krishna consciousness is successful in his life, because simply by keeping himself in Krishna consciousness, he will be saved from the repetition of birth and death.
Yeah. Like we discussed before, Prabhupada says this miserable condition starts from the minute of conception. And Prabhupada says we have no idea when this suffering will end. But one thing is for sure, it's not going to end when we take another body. Right? Many people in this world give up their bodies thinking, oh, it's so difficult. Right? This is why people commit suicide. Is that their life is so miserable that they think giving up their bodies will just end this misery, end this suffering. But unfortunately, that's not how it's going to end. It's definitely not going to end if we give up this body and take another body. That's what Prabhupada is emphasizing here. Therefore, the best thing to do is to take up Krishna consciousness. Why? Because Krishna consciousness can stop us from repeated birth and death. And this verse especially says that the spirit soul is going to take shelter of his friend, the spirit soul says. Right? The living entity is saying, I'm going to take shelter of my friend. And who is this friend? The clear consciousness, the mind that is very clear. Only then can we actually start thinking about anything. If our mind is too polluted or too agitated, it's very, very hard for us to think clearly. And how does Krishna consciousness give us this? Yeah, at least the intelligence, right? Clear conscience means you have the intelligence to think properly. That's what Prabhupada is saying in the purport, right? How does Krishna consciousness give us this? Yes, Prabhu.
This is probably one of many answers, but I'm just thinking of second chapter, 6th verse, the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, Bandhuratma manastasya yenat maiva manajadaha. One who has controlled the mind is the best of friends.
Yes.
One who's failed to do so is the worst enemy.
Yes. So the key is, it relates that the mind has to be controlled, therefore Krishna consciousness helps us in controlling the mind. Right? This is this incredible discussion in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam. It begins with this. Prabhupada quotes this in the first verse of the Nectar of Instruction. What's the first verse of the Nectar of Instruction? Vacho vegam, manasa krodha vegam, jikhva vegam, udaropastha vegam, etan veganyo vishaheta dira, sarvam apimam prativamsa sishyat. Rupa Goswami says, we have 6 kinds of urges, right? Vacho vegam, manasa krodha vegam. The urge of the speech, urge of the mind, urge of the anger, and then urge of the belly, and urge of the genitals. What am I missing? Jikhva vegam, the tongue. The urges of the tongue, right? One who has controlled these 6 urges, he says, can make disciples all over the world. And Prabhupada very interestingly starts this entire purport with this principle of atonement, which is very pertinent to what our discussion is here. Because the spirit soul here in this miserable condition within the womb is really atoning for everything that he has done. He is very clearly accepting that I am in this miserable condition. It's because of my actions. It's not because Krishna you've put me there. Therefore, I'm very sorry. And therefore, I want to take a turn from what I've been doing, right, and surrender unto you. So this idea is very clear that the spirit soul is atoning, and it even says in one of the prayers I forget, for a repentant soul. We read this one verse, right? For somebody who's repentant, you can get the mercy of Krishna. So this principle of repentance is there, right? So at the end of the 5th canto, Shukadeva Goswami has explained all these hellish planets, these ridiculous hellish planets where the living entity is going and suffering. And yet, Parikshit Maharaj has this question. Okay, the spirit soul is atoning for all his sinful activities, and yet he's still committing the same sinful activities again. Right? This is the fear of this living entity also, is that when I come out of the womb, I'm going to be covered by this external energy of yours, and I'm going to live life as usual and go through all these miserable conditions. And Prabhupada gives this example of this thief in the purport to Nectar of Instruction, text 1, is that the thief perfectly knows well that he is going to be put in jail for the fraud that he's committing, for the act that he's committing. And yet, the thief cannot stop thieving. And he gives the example of an elephant, right? The elephant takes a bath very nicely and comes out and puts sand all over its body. So Parikshit Maharaj is asking this question, that what use is this atonement when you've atoned for it and you come and do the same thing again? Right? Prabhupada says the churches also, right? We go and atone for our sins, and then we come and do the same thing again. And he doesn't leave the Hare Krishnas. We chant nicely and still continue to do the same thing again. He quotes the 7th offense, right? We continue to commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy names. So what use is this atonement? Therefore, Shukadeva Goswami says, yes, you cannot counteract an impious activity with a pious activity, which is basically what atonement is. You're committing some pious activity. So therefore, knowledge is what can take you out of this condition. That's what Shukadeva Goswami says. But yet Parikshit Maharaj is still not convinced, because we've seen many situations where this knowledge is there, and yet we're not able to do the right thing, although there is knowledge. And therefore Parikshit Maharaj is still not convinced by this answer. And therefore Shukadeva Goswami finally says, yes, even knowledge is not sufficient. You have to perform devotional service. You know why? Why is atonement not helping us? What is the root cause of even knowledge or even atonement that is not actually helping us in our condition of not performing those activities again and again? Why is it that it is not helping us, even though we atone? Yeah, the inclination, that is the key. Although we are atoning for the things, the inclination or the desire to commit those activities is still there. And what bhakti does is that it takes out that desire from the root. This is what Rupa Goswami says in the Nectar of Instruction. Syat Krishna nama charitadi sitapi avidya pittopatapta rasanasya rochikano kintwadvarad anudinam kalusaiva jasta swadvikramad bhavati tadgata mula hantri. That mula, at the root, it is killed. Right? Our desire, he says, is we are all in this condition of material existence, he says, is like that of a jaundice patient. Right? And the cure for a jaundice patient, as we all know, is sugar candy. Right? But when the jaundice patient tastes the sugar candy, it's not so sweet. It is actually very bitter. But the cure for jaundice is the sugar candy. Once the patient consumes sugar candy for a long period of time, then the jaundice goes away and he can actually taste the sweetness of the sugar candy. Therefore, he says, Sat Krishna Nama Charitadi Sitapya Vidya. That the names, forms, activities, pastimes of Krishna, for a conditioned soul initially is not very easy. It's very bitter to take. But that's the medicine. We keep chanting, hearing, performing devotional service, then it slowly starts taking away the disease of material conditioning. And not just taking away, it completely uproots it from the root. It's not a superficial treatment. It goes to the root cause of what the problem is and completely takes it away. And then we can taste the sweetness of Krishna consciousness. And therefore, that is why Prabhupada says here that Krishna consciousness can stop this repeated birth and death, because the repeated birth and death is a consequence of our desire to lord it over material nature. Right? That is why Krishna consciousness or devotional service is so powerful. It takes it out from the root. Okay, let's continue with Prabhupada's purport.
The child prays that it is better to remain within the womb of darkness and be constantly absorbed in Krishna consciousness than to get out and again fall a victim to the illusory energy. The illusory energy acts within the abdomen as well as outside the abdomen, but the trick is that one should remain Krishna conscious, and then the effect of such a horrible condition cannot act unfavorably upon him. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that one's intelligence is his friend, and the same intelligence can also be his enemy. Here also the same idea is repeated, Suridatmanaiva, friendly intelligence. Absorption of intelligence in the personal service of Krishna and full consciousness of Krishna always are the path of self-realization and liberation. Without being unnecessarily agitated, if we take to the process of Krishna consciousness by constantly chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, the cycle of birth and death can be stopped for good.
Good. Yeah. So it's not just that we have hope. That's basically what Prabhupada is saying. Okay, this living entity is there within the womb and is able to remember Krishna, but we can still do it outside in this material world. It is still possible. And Prabhupada gives these amazing nuggets in his purport. Absorption of intelligence in the personal service of Krishna and full consciousness of Krishna always are the path of self-realization and liberation. Like just this one sentence, you can expand it so much, right? So, chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Okay, let's continue.
It may be questioned herein how the child can be fully Krishna conscious within the womb of mother without any paraphernalia with which to execute Krishna consciousness. It is not necessary to arrange for paraphernalia to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. The child wants to remain within the abdomen of his mother, and at the same time wants to become free from the clutches of Maya. One does not need any material arrangements to cultivate Krishna consciousness. One can cultivate Krishna consciousness anywhere and everywhere, provided he can always think of Krishna, the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, can be chanted even within the abdomen of one's mother. One can chant while sleeping, while working, while imprisoned in the womb, or while outside. This Krishna consciousness cannot be checked in any circumstances. The conclusion of the child's prayer is, let me remain in this condition, although it is very miserable. It is better not to fall a victim to Maya again by going outside.
Yeah. Actually, two important points that Prabhupada discusses in this purport. Right, one is the child's very clear decision-making ability that I really don't want to get out of this womb because I don't want to fall victim to Maya again. And Prabhupada is giving us this prescription that if we are able to be absorbed in the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, then even outside the womb, there is all possibility that we will never be affected by the external energy of Krishna. Because devotional service belongs to the category of Krishna's internal potency. And therefore, it cannot be touched by any circumstance. So, while reading this purport, I was thinking about one personality who really didn't want to get out of the womb also. Yeah. The speaker of the Bhagavatam really didn't want to get out of his mother's womb precisely for this exact reason. You know how many years he was there in the womb? Yeah, he was there in the womb for 16 years. And Vyasadev had to basically beg him, can you please come out now? And then you know what Shukadeva Goswami said? I will come out if you promise me that I wouldn't be influenced by Krishna's external energy. If you can give me that promise, then I will come out of my mother's womb. The exact same situation that this living entity was in. Like, I don't want to come out of the womb. It's better being in this miserable situation because I'm able to think of Krishna. This was Shukadeva Goswami, also in the same situation. And yet, we come out of the mother's womb, and to perform Krishna consciousness itself, Prabhupada says you don't need too much paraphernalia. He's quoting exactly this living entity within the womb and saying, people might ask, how can he perform devotional service? Because within the womb, there is absolutely no facility to gather any paraphernalia or do anything opulent to Krishna in terms of how externally people think of devotional service, right? But Prabhupada is saying that devotional service is not a matter of externalities, the things that you might have. It's a matter of consciousness, what we are thinking. And another thing I was thinking precisely for this situation of a person who had nothing but was able to offer very opulent worship to Krishna. Remember any such instance? Yeah, all of us should know this because we have this diorama in the hallway of Narasimhananda Brahmachari, right? Mahaprabhu wanted to go to Vrindavan, and yet this Narasimhananda Brahmachari wanted to serve Mahaprabhu in some way, but he had no resources. He was a very, very poor Brahmana. And what was he doing? He was constructing an incredible pathway for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And these details are what makes it incredible, right? It's not just the thought. You can see repeatedly again and again and again in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, when the devotees are thinking about Krishna, their remembrance of Krishna is never generic. Oh, Krishna, you're so beautiful. A devotee never says and stops at that. He definitely says, Krishna, you're so beautiful, but they define Krishna's beauty. They describe Krishna's beauty in such detail. Krishna, you have such amazing lotus lips. You have earrings, 2 earrings that are dangling front and back, right? But they just don't stop at that. They even go on to describe, Krishna, you have shark-shaped earrings, right? Krishna, you have a beautiful turban, and you have a beautiful peacock feather on the turban, and you have this beautiful, wonderful garland, and they go on to say, oh, what kind of a garland it is. What kind of flowers that are there in the garland. And this is the kind of remembrance that the devotee is able to achieve, right? This is the perfection actually of Shravanam and Kirtanam, is that we are able to do Vishnu Smaranam. If we are able to do proper hearing and proper chanting, the result would be incredible Vishnu Smaranam in such details. You can see Bhishma Dev in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam when he is lying in his deathbed, the remembrance that he has of Krishna. Especially he has this one picture framed in his mind of Krishna, of where Krishna is the chariot driver of Arjuna. He just doesn't stop at that. He remembers Krishna on how he looked in the battlefield, of how drops of perspiration were decorating his lotus face. And all this dust from the battlefield was covering Krishna's lotus face. And not just that, he is remembering how Krishna is holding the reins of the chariot in one hand. He even mentions on which hand Krishna is holding the reins of the chariot and which hand Krishna is holding the whip of the chariot. This is the detail of remembrance that the devotee has at the time of death. This is what all of us are expected to. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. Tyajat ante kalevaram. Tam tam eva iti kaunteya. Sada tad bhava bhavita. That at the moment of death, what is emphasized is not hearing, not chanting. Of course, hearing and chanting. But when we are hearing and chanting, what should trigger our remembrances of Krishna? Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. Our attitude, our bhava towards Krishna, our remembrance of Krishna in very specific ways is what we strive to achieve at the moment of death. Right? That is why we are hearing. The minute when we hear Krishna, Bhishma Dev remembers this. Some other devotee remembers something else. But the remembrances are really, really specific. And for us to do that, we have to practice that in our current circumstance, when we don't have the troubles of kapha, vata, pitta, right? Mukunda Mala Stotra Kulashekar Alvar prays this. That, oh, let my mind be wrapped around the lotus feet of Krishna, when I can actually do it right now. When at the moment of death, I'll be coughing and I'll have bile that's troubling me, and so many things that will make it impossible for me to think of you, Krishna. Let my mind think of you constantly now, he says. So I want to read the description of how Nrsimhananda Brahmachari actually built this pathway to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's really, really beautiful in the way of how detailed he constructs this path. You can see the picture outside after you go after the class, and you can see the description and the diorama. It's so beautiful the way he constructs this path for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yeah, 5 minutes and we'll be done. So the purport is done. We'll just read this and get it done. Okay. So this is Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela. This is chapter 1, text 156 through 159. This is the section. First, Nrsimhananda Brahmachari contemplated a broad road starting from the city of Kulia. He bedecked the road with jewels, upon which he then laid a bed of stemless flowers. He just didn't put flowers. He put a bed of stemless flowers. Right? And then he mentally decorated both sides of the road with Bakula flower trees, not just any flower trees, Bakula flower trees. And at intervals on both sides, he placed lakes of transcendental nature. These lakes had bathing places, not just lakes, right? Oh, there are lakes. He now goes into more detail of how he is constructing these lakes. These lakes had bathing places constructed with jewels, and they were filled with blossoming lotus flowers. There were various birds chirping, and the water was exactly like nectar. The entire road was surcharged with many cool breezes, which carried the fragrances from various flowers. He carried the construction of this road as far as Kanai Natshala. And then there are reasons why it stopped. But you can see the remembrance of the devotee on how detailed it is. So we'll stop here for now. If there are any questions or comments or any other reflections we can take. Yes? You can take the mic.
Talking about meditation at time of death, Gurudev mentioned that the deity should be dressed in such a way that, and your meditation should be on that particular type style of dressing. Like for example, he's explained how Kalachandji has to be dressed. He said, you just dress Kalachandji exactly like that every day. And so when you're meditating on Kalachandji every day, immediately that image comes into your mind. Yeah. It's not difficult to focus on Krishna.
Yeah.
That's what he said. At the time of death, when it's so much difficult, it's hard to focus.
Yeah.
But when you are seeing that one particular style of dressing, and every day you're meditating on that, it's so easy to focus on that particular style, and immediately it comes into your mind. So he says, pick one deity. He says, pick one deity and just concentrate on that one deity. So that time of death, you'll not fumble, focus, where can I focus?
Yeah.
That deity will immediately come into your mind. Because you're focusing on that deity every day.
Yeah.
He says, pick one deity.
Very
That's
nice.
what he said.
Thank you.
And one style.
Kalachandji ki jai.
Jai.
Mataji, if it's getting late, you may go for the breakfast. I think people might wanna. So. Okay. There's nothing else. We should stop here now. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। वंचा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। Okay. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you. I'm mindful of the time. Usually 5 minutes is okay.
Well, the standard that we try to go for is that we have 15 minutes left, so we stop talking at 8:15 and we open for questions and answers. So that's my concern was is that okay, you're stopping late and then questions and answers. So when we have more how does that work? That's when it becomes because let's say our service, that's when it becomes kind of right now it's fine, but
No, it's fine.
No, but I guess every time